The other thing I wanted to ask both of you, because again, when we started this conversation, I mentioned you are a convention queen. You could be a convention queen too, or a convention king, whatever you'd like to be.
I'm never hired to be myself, so I'm open to anything.
Your presence at these events makes a huge difference, and the community that I feel whenever I come to one of your panels is really something extra special. So I was wondering, do you remember the very first time when you realized that going to conventions and helping to foster this community would be a big part of your lives?
Well, for me, it was at the beginning of the Clone Wars when they flew us down, I think it was to Dallas, and they did this cute little fan event that was helping to promote our show, the Clone Wars, which is, I think about it, that's about the only promotion we ever did of Clone Wars. But there you could see full force, so to speak, the fandom and the love and the appreciation and the expectation and the excitement that was ready to catch fire. And at that time, it was like, wow, this is not just telling a story, but this has great meaning that connects into people's lives. But I would have had no idea that it would grow to this size that we see at all these conventions we go to, and that it would continue in such a wonderful and gratifying way to the stories they're now telling.
And for me, I discovered this way before Ahsoka said this line, but there's a line that Ahsoka says in the final season of Clone Wars. She says, "In my life, when you find people who need your help, you help them, no matter what. I guess it's just who I am." And I found that these conventions are a way where we can help each other. And it helps me too. You all coming to meet us, I can't tell you how much it's helped me. And you know, so often people come up in tears, and it's happened a couple times today, and everyone's always like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I promised I wouldn't cry," and I'm like, no, these are great tears. How lucky are we that we love something so much that it brings us to tears? That's incredible. So bring on the tears. I'll cry with you. And yeah, right? So to me, this is the favorite part of my job, that I get to come to a place where we get to connect and help each other and cry over it because it brings us so much joy. I hope to do that, and I hope I'm blessed to do that for the rest of my life.
Now, because that makes me curious, so a lot of people out there are brought to tears by how much they love your work and Star Wars in general. Can you each name another franchise that, you know, the fandom is so strong in you for it that it could bring you to tears?
Another franchise that to compare to Star Wars tears. I've seen there's a lot of joy, there's a lot of gratitude, there's a lot of excitement, but the pathos, the actual tears, that I don't have anything to compare with to the Star Wars version of that.
Tis fair.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm also a big Disney fan, so I would say Disney.
I feel like seeing my niece and nephews fall in love with Star Wars and Disney in general, and especially like her seeing herself in Disney princesses and then coming to me and analyzing what they did, makes my heart so full. I love it. Let's get into some specifics now. Dee, I have a broader questions about all the characters you've voiced. Of every character you've ever voiced, who came most naturally to you? Where like you just found them immediately, but then I also want to know the most difficult voice to find in the bunch.
It's really easy for me to be Daffy Duck.
I think Daffy. I wish I were Bugs Bunny, but I think I'm more Daffy Duck. And that was actually an easy one to jump into, because I think of myself, I think my default is more of a comedic default. And I must say that the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch, that's the biggest challenge for me. And not that it's like this unpleasant effort, but it just calls much more from me creatively, and also beyond the default of how I think of myself. And I think lucky is the person who is able to come into a life that asks more of you than you are used to asking of yourself, and that you're able to find it within yourself and rise to it and to move with that, so that you end up seeing that there's more here than you even thought was there. So that's the wonderful benefit of that challenge that I found doing the clones and doing the Bad Batch.
I got a follow-up for you on that, because this just crossed my mind. It's another two-part question, because you voice so many characters in Bad Batch. When you first signed on for the show, which character were you most looking forward to voicing? And then I want to know the character who wound up being more creatively fulfilling to lend your voice to than you ever could have imagined at the start.
Well, the funnest one to dive into is Wrecker. I mean, he's the one that I wish I were, and I'm probably the furthest from him. And to my surprise, my favorite and the most creatively challenging and the most interesting is Crosshair, who starts out as kind of a surly snake of a guy, who then kind of falls away and makes some bad choices. But his whole redemption arc really touched a lot of people, and that really surprised me. And I must say the other surprise was Tech. That especially when Tech is talking to Omega about how I process things differently, and yet it doesn't mean that I feel any less than you. That very moment really connected with a lot of people, and it connects with me as well. And it's really a testimony, I think, to the whole creative engine that Disney and Filoni and Brad and Jen had in creating the Bad Batch in particular, that these are stories that are human and that really connect with people on a human level, and that people thirst for that, and they really long to have a story of hope and redemption, and that's what you got in Star Wars, and very much so in the Bad Batch.
You just brought up Dave Filoni. I always love singing his praises. So for both of you, can you tell me something that he's done as a leader on the projects that you've worked on that have helped you exceed your own expectations for your work in the roles?
Well, there's many years. We've all been working together since 2006. So that's why I think it's like going back in the data banks there. But a lesson Dave taught me that is a lesson about Ahsoka, but it's also, for me, it was profound. Dave told me, he said, "Ashley, you don't know how powerful you are." And it really took me aback. I'm like, huh? And he goes, no. He said, you really don't realize how powerful you are. He said, because you're kind. And I never looked at kindness as a power. I always looked at kindness as a weakness. And it didn't mean that I wasn't kind, because my parents raised me. That was the #1 rule in our house, was to be kind. But people growing up would always say, you're too nice, be tough. You're too kind, like, you have to be firm, be tough. And so I always looked at kindness as a weakness, and it wasn't until he said that. And also I realized that that's actually Ahsoka's true power, is her kindness, when I really stepped into my power. And I'm like, wow, okay, if kindness is powerful, I'm going to double down on being kind. I'm going to be the kindest person you ever want to meet. And so in my own way, and Ahsoka, when you look at her, she's tiny. She's not the biggest, she's not the strongest or the fastest, but she is one of the most powerful, and it's because of her heart, and it's because of her light, and it's because of her kindness.
It's a beautiful answer. for you, Dee?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's fun making Star Wars because unlike other projects, a story is often shrouded in secrecy, even from those who are performing it.
Yes.
And so there were very exciting moments, which you understand if you've appreciated Star Wars as long as I have, that secrecy is very important. You want to contain the secret or the surprise of the story, whether it's a big reveal or a small reveal. And so there were moments where what we were given was just enough, but no more. And that was to good purpose, I think. And the other thing I think that really I think struck me is that Dave would throw me these scripts or these ideas, and that he would allow me to come up with the idea, and usually he would say, "Great, let's go with it." I think it shows a great confident capacity to be able to collaborate in a way that allows for freedom. Because I think creativity, you can say, can be done on a gradient of control versus freedom. And both of those are definitely in play in the making of these stories, but that within this kind of controlled matrix of storytelling and creation, that there was always, for me, a sense of freedom and encouraging expectation from Dave Filoni, or really from anybody who was directing us in the creation of these stories, that really allowed them to be, as fantastically good as they are.
Such an important thing to point out. All right, we're going to toss it to the audience in a minute. I'm going to squeeze in another question of mine here, though. Do you want a serious one, or do you want something a little silly? Do I dare ask?
Well, I like silly questions, so I don't want to get too serious.
You don't want to get too serious. All right, so this might get weird. I'm fascinated by efforts. Fascinated by efforts. I want to know which effort is easiest for you to do in the sound booth, and then I also want to know which is the most challenging sound to replicate when you're voicing a character.
Oh. Well, this is something that I learned how to do watching Dee a lot. So efforts are, when you're in a fight, or you're falling off a cliff, or you get picked up by a giant bird and flown across the room. Our characters have sounds for those, but you don't often think about what does that sound like? So it was really difficult for me at first. I mean, I think the easiest is a lightsaber fight, because you're just like, but the hardest to me is when you're falling. Like, Ahsoka has been dropped before, and Dave is like, okay, you're falling a couple 100 feet. So,
is that your Dave impression?
Yes, it is. Eckstein. What about you, Dee?
Yeah, it's just out. If Wrecker is yelling, that's the most challenging sound. Is to yell as Wrecker. It just wrecks my voice. But the key about making effort sounds as a voice actor, and it's related to creature vocalizations. That you're not making a sound. You're helping to tell the story. And so the sound that you are making is very much woven into the specifics of what is playing out with the story and the intent of what's playing out. So you're not making these generic efforts and grunts. They're in reaction to something that has happened, either an effort that you are making, or that you're taking damage, or that you're lunging, or that you're moving. But you're playing this in your mind as an actor, and you can kind of see it. And so then you give something that feels real and authentic, and that can fit, hopefully, beautifully into the story when they edit this all together. And that's part of what you lock into as a voice actor, is that ultimately, the words or even the sounds are really the vehicle, but they're not the destination. That you must see that in your mind very specifically, and then you can bring out something that feels natural and authentic.
I love how I tee that up as a sillier question. That was really informative. I appreciate that.
Oh, what's your serious question? I want to hear the serious one too.
You want a serious question? All right, I'm gonna pick wisely here. All right, so Ashley, I'll ask you this for Ahsoka in particular, and Dee, I'll open this up to let's say any of the Bad Batch characters, especially because the show is coming to a close soon. Is there any particular unexplored aspect of their personality or corner of their life that you hope gets to continue on as the Star Wars franchise evolves? Especially because you've explored Ahsoka in so many different capacities, like shows, movies, books.
Yes, well, I feel like Dave Filoni is always watching, so I'm not going to say anything because, oftentimes we say something and then it starts rumors. But and as Dee mentioned, we're only in the know when we have to be, and oftentimes we are not in the know. So I don't know anything. This is just me as a fan speaking. But the thing with Ahsoka, there's still a lot of her story that we haven't told. I mean, even between Clone Wars and Rebels, there's 15 years in there of stories we haven't really told. So there's a lot left to uncover, and I hope we continue to do that for many, many years to come.
I'll just manifest more audiobooks that you narrate. It's like one of the greatest Star Wars joys for me is listening to that. Thank you.
So my wish for exploration is a little odd. It's this, is what I would like, as a fan of this, not just as someone who helps make it, but as a fan of this, is I would like an immersive, interactive game where you go on missions with the Bad Batch. With you dial back. This is before Order 66 and before all of that, and that you can go on missions with them, but then you can also do casual gaming. For instance, you can play checkers with Wrecker, or you can cook a meal with Tech, or you can play a sniping game with Crosshair. That you can play just kind of, it's not battle, but it's like, what do they do when they hang out in between whatever's blowing up or transpiring, and just kind of hang out with them and just socialize with some social games with the Bad Batch. I would love that.
I love that. And I feel like you just came up with a really cool podcast, Checkers with Wrecker.
I would play that game and I would listen to that podcast in a heartbeat.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and click to watch one of my other reviews. Thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you.